Hey guys, Michael the DC Multiverse Collector here, giving you a review of the last two figures in the McFarlane Toys Batman the Animated Series Condiment King Build-A-Figure Wave. So if you haven't seen my other video where I review Batman and Robin, please check that out. But today I'll be giving you a look at the villains. So today we're going to look at Mr. Freeze and Scarecrow, and we're going to assemble the Condiment King Build-A-Figure, which is a new figure, which is really exciting, and we're going to see how well that fits together, how easy it is to put together, how solid it feels, and generally what the figure's like. So that's pretty exciting. Big thank you to Head Start Toys and McFarlane Toys for sending this entire wave to me to have a look at, to review for you. But as always, my opinions will be honest and my own. You'll see that I've got here the Platinum Edition of the Scarecrow figure. Now, that for those of you who don't know, most of you will, but for those who don't, Platinum Editions are chase variants that McFarlane produces in more limited quantities, and they usually have an alternative paint job. You'll see that this Scarecrow looks quite different from the Scarecrow that is part of the Wave regular. You see he comes in those regular colors there, but that does not match what we have here. And there's another depiction of the Scarecrow. You'll see that this figure has a completely different paint job. I do not have access to the original version, but so apart from the paint, everything else will be the same. So this review will be sort of some use, I think, in getting a sense of the figure, but of course the paint job may vary. You should check out some other reviews and pictures online to see what the standard release looks like. Like I said with my Batman and Robin review, I love this box art, which features the characters in their animated incarnations and shows you Condiment King and all the pieces that you get with each figure, and a little summary of the wave. So I think the packaging is on point, very nostalgic. And like I said in my Batman and Robin review, I love this show so much. It's probably, in my top 5 to 10 shows of all time. And it stayed there throughout my adult life. So excited to have a look at these. I'm a sucker for Batman rogues. So if any figures are really going to impress me, it's these two. So let's get them open and have a look. Starting off with Mr. Freeze. Here's everything you get in the package. And just can I say that Mr. Freeze is one of my favorite Batman villains of all time. And he is one of my favorite villains because of that classic depiction of him in that episode of the animated series, Heart of Ice, where the writers gave Mr. Freeze an updated tragic backstory and, transformed this character into one of the most sort of tragic and pathos-filled Batman rogues that there is. So I'm very, very partial to this depiction of Mr. Freeze. Can I just say that off the bat? So I'll try and remain objective, even though I really, really love this version of the character. So in terms of accessories, we get the trading card with Mr. Freeze art from the animated series. Here is the bio on the back. You can pause that if you'd like to have a read. We also get the mustard and ketchup backpack for Condiment King. Now, this is one of the more fun parts of Condiment King. This is just a solid chunk of plastic with those straps. Two very sort of sturdy feeling nylon-y ropes with the mustard and ketchup dispensers or guns at the end. So that's a fun accessory. I'm glad these are ropes and not some bendy plastic that's going to be warped and difficult to maneuver. And, I think the rope was the right idea. It doesn't look perfect, but I think it's going to be a more flexible solution than any sort of tube could be. So we'll have a look at that later when we put Condiment King together. In terms of what else we get a freeze gun. It's very, very simple, pretty faithful to the cartoon design, but that it is what it is. And we also get a selection of alternate hands. Now, in terms of the hands, we get a set of gripping hands, fists, and 2 sets of gesture hands, one in sort of a threatening gesture, one in more of a neutral gesture. So I think that's a great selection of hands, really will give you some sort of alternate posing possibilities, so that's a win. So in terms of the overall look of the figure and feel of the figure, I think this Mr. Freeze is actually really, really well done. Now, as you'll know from if you saw my review of the Batman and Robin figures, I'm really not a fan of this cell shading approach to the paintwork. In general, I think it's a bad idea, but I think if you're going to do it, I think Mr. Freeze gets away quite unscathed. There are these subtle lines on the upper legs and on the arms, down the body. I just find them fairly tasteful. I mean, I'd rather they weren't there, to be honest, but like if you're going to do this, if this is the approach you're going to take, I think it's probably the most tasteful application that you could do if you're going to do this. So look, it's okay. The paint does not deter me for this figure. I think if you like Mr. Freeze and you want a Mr. Freeze animated series figure, the paint shouldn't put you off. He looks pretty good on the shelf. And just, you know, looking at him like this, he fits the bill. The overall colors are fine. You know, it's a very subdued figure, not too much going on. I just wanted to point out that his dome is removable. You can get a better look. That very nice head sculpt that is extremely accurate to the source material, and the paint around the eyes, the goggles, is really, really nice. So that's that. It's also worth noting that his little canister at the back pops out. That peg looks very brittle. I'd just be very careful with that peg. I might remove it just for the rest of this review because I feel like I'm going to snap it. In general, the plastic feels really brittle. I don't know, there's something scary about handling these figures. I feel like I just have to be a little bit careful with how I play with them. This figure has peg holes, unlike Batman and Robin, who did not, so that's fairly interesting. Articulation-wise, let's have a look. His head will swivel 360 degrees. He's not going to look down. He articulates at the neck, so he can look down a little bit. He can look up a little bit, and he can rock left to right quite well. So that's, you know, not too bad in the circumstances given the design they went with. Arms go up Scarecrow style, but no further. Likewise, yeah, not much more than that. There is absolutely no elbow articulation at all. So there's this piece here which separates the upper arm and the lower arm. There is no hinge. There's nothing. So you won't be bending those arms. I'm sure that's not news to you if you've picked up the original release of this figure, but I've never handled that figure, and this was quite a surprise to me that he had no articulation in the arms, which it feels like they could have found a solution while preserving the look of the figure. Anyway, it is what it is. He does rotate though. So there is rotation here. I'm not sure how useful that is for anyone, but he can do it. And the hands have rotation and a single hinge, which is okay. At the waist, there is nothing. He does not twist at the waist. There is no diaphragm cut. I'm glad there's no diaphragm cut because that would have absolutely destroyed the sculpt. And this sculpt needs to be just clean, I think. For this figure to make sense, he needs to look clean. Good choice there. But I feel like you could have worked waist swivel into it while still preserving this. I'm not sure. I don't engineer figures, but like there's got to be a way, right? Let me know if you can think of a way they could have done it, or a similar figure with like a big belt buckly thing like that, where they still manage to articulate without breaking it up. Anyway, maybe it's not that easy and that's why they didn't bother. It's not a huge deal. There's a fair bit of articulation in the legs, however. So he kicks out. Oh, no. Scratch that. He doesn't quite kick out 45 degrees. And when you do try and kick him out here, you get lots of friction against the plastic. So you can hear it. You can hear it grinding. You don't want to push that too far. You'll break it. Knees, 90 degrees. Single jointed. Won't go anymore. There is swivel just under the boot here. Hinges up, hinges down at the toe, but at the foot, but otherwise no toe articulation, which is okay. And he can do the splits very awkwardly, just in case you want to have Victor Freeze do the splits. It can be done, but it looks hideous, and why would you? You know, just pointless. But overall, yeah, that is stiff, and that is like stuck now. And so I feel like there's a lot of stiffness around this leg articulation, and you just got to be careful when handling this, I think. It won't hold up to rough play or to extreme poses, so bear that in mind. The other thing I'll say is these legs are very loose. They sort of just flop around like that. So getting this guy to stand may not always be that easy. You kind of have to finagle the feet, rotate them, try and find some balance, lean him forward a bit. And there you go, I finally got him to stand up. I really think a display stand would have helped with some of these figures. If they've got such loose legs, you know, and, you know, limited articulation in the ankles and feet, you really need to be able to stand them on something. Anyway, it works fine. You just have to find the balance. And obviously some of you will be better at that than I am. Overall, I really like Mr. Freeze. He's basically a statue. You're not going to get many poses out of him. He's going to stand there stoic, straight. That's fine. That's all you really need from Mr. Freeze. I do think it's disappointing you can't get any more articulation out of the elbows. Like, you just sort of want to get more poses with his, you know, freeze gun. I think that's a little bit limiting, and they could have done better. But you know, they stuck to these old molds, and that's what we get. But like, if you're just going to pose him on the shelf, you know, like this, he looks pretty awesome, in my opinion. Turning now to Scarecrow, Jonathan Crane, another one of my favorite Batman villains, not, you know, coincidentally, because of the way he was depicted in the animated series. Now, strictly speaking, this design for Jonathan Crane is not the first design from the animated series. I think the first couple of episodes, he had a much more simplified design, and then it sort of evolved into this design here that you see on the trading card, which is my favorite Jonathan Crane. And then in Batman: The New Adventures, he got an absolutely terrifying redesign, which is also cool. But basically, there's no Scarecrow that I don't love. So really great character, really one of my favorite villains. In the box, we get the collector's card with that awesome art, and of course the bio for Jonathan Crane if you want to read about that. We also get the most important part of Condiment King, his head, his chest. Looks pretty cool. We'll talk about that later when we put him together. What else do we get? We get a very, very cool looking overlarge scythe. It is a little bit deformed in the packaging. That can probably be straightened out with some hot water, and some very nice sort of cell shading there showing the sheen. I don't mind that at all. So overall, nice looking accessory. We also get an alternate Jonathan Crane head, extremely accurate to the animated series. He looks like a total jerk, which is perfect. So that's a really nice head to get. We don't often get Jonathan Crane, Dr. Jonathan Crane head, so I do like that quite a bit. And we also get some menacing gesture hands, which show off his sort of creepy fingers. They're quite nice to get as well. So like I said at the outset of this review, this is the platinum version of Scarecrow. It's not the original version with the more traditional red paint job. This sort of has this sort of brown and mustard paint job, which I kind of don't hate, but it's certainly not the image of Scarecrow that comes to mind when I first think of him. Would I have preferred to have the original paint job? Yes. Do I think this looks bad? Not at all. It's just different and a little bit odd, but it's kind of cool, you know. Overall, aesthetically then, ignoring the paint job, I think this is actually a really cool looking figure. Of course, it's not a new figure. We've seen it before. It's got the proportions right, you know, those incredibly skinny legs, skinny arms, broader chest. I think the sculpt is on point, right? And the face, I mean, paint job aside, extremely good. Extremely accurate. The hat looks perfect. The hair, perfect. So like aesthetically, that is the Scarecrow. And can I just say, while we're talking about the paint job and the cell shading, this would have to be probably, you know, Mr. Freeze is good, but this is the best application of that cell shading in that you can barely notice it. There's a little bit on the torso, very subtle with the folds in his shirt. And there's some on the legs, but the brown and the black are so sort of similar that it barely stands out, and you barely know it was there. So, you know, that's how you do cell shading. I don't even want to notice it. You know, that's the ideal. So good job on the paint. But yeah, this is a very odd looking color scheme for Scarecrow. I keep looking at it and it confuses me a bit, but I kind of don't hate it. Those red eyes look pretty cool. And he does look like a Scarecrow, you know, like standing in a field. Anyway, he's scary. Articulation, you know, I'm scared to maneuver this guy too much because of how flimsy he is, but very stiff joints. You get the Scarecrow pose, so to speak. Single jointed elbow, but it goes more than, you know, 90 degrees. So that's nice. At the wrist, it's got a rotation and a single hinge. which is all right. Oh, such a stiff arm. Now, waist articulation is underneath the shirt, and you do get a decent amount. I could probably twist it all the way around, but I'm just going to leave it there because I do not want this guy to break on me. Head articulation, because of the hair, you don't get much downward movement. You get a tiny bit of upward, but yeah, most of the movement is rocking from side to side and like subtle. Yeah, like you can kind of twist it a bit. Yeah, that works. The hair does get in the way, but like, yeah, it is what it is. It's fine. Legs kick out, 90 degrees, double jointed knees. So that's a surprise to me anyway. And let me see if there's any sort of swivel. There is a little bit of swivel at the thigh, and there's swivel at the ankle, rotates. Oh, so stiff. Down and up. That is a very stiff hinge on the foot. You're not going to be able to do much, but why would you need to rotate, tilt that up? I don't really know. I think it's probably okay. So yeah, I mean, no diaphragm cut, thank goodness. That would have ruined the sculpt. I think it's a really, really good depiction of Scarecrow. Ignoring this sort of unusual platinum paint job, I think it looks, yeah, it looked perfect in the original release. This one looks good too. So I do like that quite a bit. And for completeness, here is Scarecrow with his Dr. Jonathan Crane alternative head sculpt. I would never display the figure like this, but I think it's really cool that it was included, and I think it looks really, really good. So overall, as a display piece, I think this Scarecrow is awesome. The cell shading does not let it down. I think if you're going to go out and hunt a Scarecrow, I think the original paint job is, 10 times better. I've seen it, I've seen pictures, I've seen the original release, it looks way better. Even the cell shading looks perfectly fine on it as well. So I think if you're a fan of Scarecrow and you want a figure with limited articulation that's going to be an accurate depiction of the animated series version of this character to stand on the shelf with your other rogues and look cool, this is a winner. It's probably my favorite of the entire wave. I haven't looked at Condiment King yet, but yeah, Scarecrow, I think, is my favorite, and if I were you, I'd track down the original paint job and not the Platinum Chase. Okay, and finally we get to check out the one new figure in this wave, which is the Build-A-Figure Condiment King. Here are all his bits and pieces laid out. Give me a moment to put this together and we'll check out how cool it is. So here is the Condiment King put together. It was a relatively easy process. The only part that gave me any trouble was inserting the arms into the torso. They were very, very stiff ball joints. I had to dip the ball joint in hot water for 15-20 seconds, and then it popped right into the arm socket. No problem, but very, very stiff, and don't want to break the figure, so I suggest warming them up before you try and insert them. First impressions are, this is a really, really cool sort of depiction of Condiment King from the animated series. He's sort of a joke character, we all know that, but we sort of love him. I really, really like the general aesthetic of this guy. I think the cell shading on this one it's annoying, but it's not egregious. I think it's quite tastefully done. Except, look, I would say there's a little bit of brown slop on the side of his head that I'd rather not be there. But overall, I think it's a fine looking figure. And if you've been wanting to add a Condiment King to your animated series collection, you've got to go for it. This is as good as it's going to get, I think, and I think it's pretty great. I haven't touched the figure yet, and there's a reason for that. It's really the biggest flaw of this Build-A-Figure, which is that it's almost impossible to stand up. You have to find the perfect center of gravity, and the reason for that, I'm going to touch him now, and I probably won't get him to stand again, okay? So fair warning. The problem is that these legs are so loose, like they are just, look at that, flopping around all over the place, not holding any sort of shape, and he's so top-heavy that he does the splits. So that is the big flaw of this figure. No display stand. Got peg holes, but no display stand. And his legs are incredibly loose. And that's not just the way I've assembled them, because they come built into that diaper. So there's just not enough friction on that ball peg, which is odd because his arms have so much friction that they can be scary to move. So the arms are full of friction. The legs have not enough friction. It's kind of not good enough in my opinion, but you can work around it if you're careful with the way you balance him. Better yet, get a display stand. Maybe some nail polish would sort that out as well. But anyway, that's probably the biggest flaw with this figure, and it's a shame. Overall though, I think the figure looks good, as I've said. Don't like the brown slop there, but otherwise the face sculpt on point. Rotates 360 degrees, forward, back, and side to side. So looks really, really good. The arms are single jointed arms. You'll get about 90 degrees, which is what you need for him to point his little mustard and ketchup guns. It'll go out to a Scarecrow. Let me just have a look. It'll go out to, yeah, Scarecrow pose, above the head. Rotates at the wrist, very stiff, but it does, and on a single hinge. Yeah, so it's fine. These arms are very stiff, just bear in mind. No diaphragm cut, which is good because it would have broken up this beautiful torso sculpt. Really, really nice work on the logo. The C is really clean. The paint's clean on the red and the yellow, like decorations there. Again, that cell shading doesn't look too bad in my opinion. It's not the end of the world. He's got a diaper piece, so that's how you know this is a McFarlane produced figure. Soft plastic diaper. What that does mean though is you can get 90 degrees and more, but it does sort of bend at that diaper, so you just got to be careful you don't wear it down. So the legs kick out that far, but won't hold. Double jointed at the knees, so that's nice, that much. A little bit of swivel at the thigh. No boots. Oh yeah, no, boot swivel and a hinge. So that's nice. And he rotates 360 degrees at the waist. So this is probably one of the better articulated of all the figures in the wave. Unfortunately, these legs are just too loose. So I think it's one of those figures that you are going to build and you're going to get him on the shelf and you're going to spend a lot of time getting him to pose just how you want him to pose. And you're going to leave him there and you're not going to breathe on him and you're not going to touch him because he'll fall over. And there you go. All right, so in summary, you'll see that I'm having to hold Condiment King up by his legs because I do not trust him to stand up and not knock these other figures over. What I was going to say is I think the villains are the highlights of this Build-A-Figure wave. Scarecrow is great, particularly in the original color scheme, probably my favorite. Mr. Freeze is good, but I think the arm articulation is pretty poor. But, you know, as a statue, he looks perfect. And Condiment King actually looks the goods. I think he's great. I think it's an excellent addition, but he won't stand up. So you're just going to have to work. Maybe your version will be better. Maybe you'll have better luck with the friction on the joints than I have, but he just will not stand up reliably. I cannot find a way just to get him to reliably stand. So there you go. That says it all. Thank you for watching this video. I hope it's been useful. If it has, hit the like button. Subscribe if you haven't. Hopefully have some new reviews coming soon. Until next time, happy collecting and thank you for watching.